Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Executive on Thursday, the 14th of December. This is one of the main decision-making bodies of the Council, and it is our last meeting of 2023. So thank you for joining us. So if we go to the agenda, first of all, apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Jenny Kent, and that's because her and Councillor Revilius have a job share. So Councillor Revilius is here in a capacity as an executive member for Environment and Climate Emergency this evening. There is no other apologies. No, everybody's here. Oh, was I told about this one? Sorry, I assume that Councillor Eyre has sent his apologies and Councillor Widdowson is substituting for him. Sorry about that.
Absolutely, Chair. Sent about 3 or 4 days ago.
Okay, all right, thank you. Right, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest this evening? No, okay, thank you. Next agenda item is the minutes of the meeting held on 16th of November. Does anybody have any comments on those at all? Can we approve those then as a fair reflection of the meeting? Thank you, everybody. Right, so I'll sign those at the end. Then, Robert, please do remind me. Public participation is agenda item number 3. And today we have 5 people who have registered to speak. And we have, the first one is Flick Williams, and she is on Teams. She's remote. So Flick, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Hi. And so you have 3 minutes and I won't give you a 30-second warning.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Off you go.
Elected members, in October, I and other objectors gave evidence to the public inquiry into Network Rail's plans regarding the Cotmanthorpe No. 2 level crossing land acquisition and closure order. Whilst a public inquiry, it was actually not so public, as despite relating to a level crossing within the boundaries of City of York, it was held in Leeds and not covered by the media at the time. It was a rare pleasure to listen to the excellent barrister engaged by this council school Network Rail on their duties under the public sector equality duty and provide chapter and verse on how they as an organisation had failed to meet it in every conceivable way. So whilst we waited patiently for the planning inspector to reach his determination and produce his report, we were shocked to learn that Network Rail, for reasons we can only speculate about, withdrew their order, effectively halting the process dead in its tracks. For the record, contrary to lazy journalism, disabled protesters are not celebrating a victory. We are no closer to a safe, accessible crossing that can be used by everyone than we were before. Disabled protesters were clear in their evidence that this crossing is dangerous even before the addition of an even greater number of high-speed trains on the 4 tracks which the crossing traverses. Let's not forget that had they gone ahead with closing the crossing in 2015 when it was first proposed and then not pursued because of access objections, 2 people who lost their lives on that crossing might still be alive. Also note for the record that on the day of the planning inspector's site visit, 2 railway workers in top-to-toe high-vis were present at the crossing to ensure the inspector and his team could cross safely. And yet the crossing now remains open, risking more fatalities simply because an accessible footbridge or underpass is not deemed a value for taxpayer money. That was said by Network Rail executives directly to me and a fellow wheelchair user in Cotmanthorpe Village Hall. So let's turn to the public purse, shall we? A Freedom of Information request reveals that as of 24th of November, Network Rail had spent £437,000 on the public inquiry that it has effectively circumvented by not waiting for it to report. I haven't yet determined how much this authority has spent on legal fees for the inquiry, but safe to say that is another 6-figure sum coming directly from the council taxpayers of York, which Network Rail has also effectively wasted. At a time when money is dominating every decision made by this authority, my fear is that we simply won't have the funds to fight this again. My question, therefore, is what will be this council's position when Network Rail try for a third time after an indeterminate period of letting the dust settle? What price can we afford to uphold the commitment to equal access for all? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments there and the question that was posed, and we will get back to you on that. Thank you very much. Our second speaker today is Councillor Waters, who wants to speak on the remit of the committee. And Councillor, would you like a 30-second warning or not?
No, you're fine. Thanks,
Okay.
Chair.
All right. Thank you. Off you go.
I last attended executive in June after the election. Now, 6 months on, and I expect you've all settled into your roles and fully realised the magnitude of what you've taken on. I'm sure you appreciate by now that the role of an executive member is largely to be the public face of the authority in carrying the can for decisions often taken by others, in some cases many years before you were even elected. In terms of the soon-to-be-discussed budget, I do hope executive members are going to give a full appraisal of why this local authority is in the financial state it's in, rather than taking the easy and comfortable option, certainly for the senior staff, of blaming reductions in government funding. Explanations of budget pressures to the council taxpayers of York ought to be explaining the implications of previous capital projects and the borrowing to support such projects on revenue budgets. The Guildhall £1 million repairs scheme that ballooned to a £25 million project with a hit to revenue budgets of £900,000 a year for 40 years would be a good starting point. A financial situation complicated even further by the council feeling unable to use the meeting facilities and having to hire at great cost other meeting venues. Perhaps you might also like to highlight the other high-profile financial black hole that was the community stadium project. Early on, the then rugby club owner, together with Oakgate and Barrett's, drew up plans for a rugby football stadium and a separate athletic stadium alongside at Monk's Cross. This was financially supported by the funds from the Vanguard scheme and from housing proposed at New Lane. Two stadiums provided at no cost to the council taxpayers, indeed with an anticipated £5 million surplus coming back to the council. And for political reasons, that was never progressed. And now, after the recent Secretary of State's decision on housing on that site, we are back to where we would have been had this been pursued, except the council taxpayers face cuts to revenue services to pay the huge borrowing costs of the scheme the council took forward. And of course, the recent £4 million write-off surrounding the Castle Gateway project. As I said at scrutiny the other week, just get the council back to doing the basics that residents deserve to see being done. Leave major development projects to private sector professionals, because every time this council get involved, it's a financial disaster. I look forward with interest to executive's budget proposals next year, and hopefully it's back to basics time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Waters, and your comments will certainly be considered in all decision making around finance, and you are absolutely correct. It is very difficult, it is very challenging, and every element is being looked at. So thank you for those points that you've raised. The next speaker is Gwen Swinburne, and she'd like to speak on governance issues within the remit of the committee. Gwen, you have 3 minutes. Would you like me to give you 30 seconds?
No, I'm in
Okay.
time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. On a positive note, I would like to mention a significant improvement in the structure, transparency and content of most of these reports, particularly the one from Assistant Director Williams. The multiple active links and clear explanation of acronyms made the report very clear. It's good to see that at least one member of staff also understands and explains what a key decision is and where it should be made. Very refreshing. Also, Chair, the cover agenda almost uniquely has all the annexes named and linked. That's important. Let's keep this up. I have some further transparency and process suggestions which I will send to you later. I do, however, have specific concerns regarding the reprocurement report on homeless services. Yet again, we see a rushed, confusing major procurement report being presented 3 weeks before the contract was supposed to end. It wasn't even on the minimalist forward plan presented to executive last month. I have repeatedly raised the matter of the appalling forward plan and how it impedes yours and ours oversight and engagement. May I ask that executive require all major procurements to be placed on the forward plan cycle, even 12 months ahead, so all members, staff, service users, suppliers and citizens are fully aware and proper considered decision-making enabled. Why was this procurement not in the forward plan back in May? Staff were surely working on it. Why has it only just turned up? It is good, at least, to have options provided this time. May I also ask why a return to in-house provision was rejected? Chair, we are now at Christmas with not even an attempt at a minimal budget consultation we have got used to. Will this administration at least present in detail their specific proposed service cuts with individual equalities impact assessments? Or will we be presented with the usual budget fodder in January, being told of all the new investments as the cuts are swept under the carpet with no consultation or impact assessment? That's it, members. I hope everyone has a happy Christmas and a nice long break without meetings or even seeing me. Thank you.
That sounds marvellous. I look forward to that. Yes, and just on the budget, I think and I hope that members and also public in here have seen that we are being very honest about what we are having to do and have been forced into. So I think hopefully on that respect you will be quite happy come January. So yes, we will take your other comments on board and thank you for speaking this evening. Our next speaker is Nigel Poulton, who's from the Island Charity and wants to speak on that application that has gone into planning. Thank you, Nigel. You have 3 minutes, so would you like me to give you 30 seconds? Sorry?
A nod would be good.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay, right, I will do, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nigel Poulton, CEO of The Island, a children's charity in York, for the past 15 years, serving and working with thousands of young people. We've journeyed in terms of our venue and location from my living room through to Priory Street. But our vision is to create a centre for children and young people, easy access for all young people in York, together with other charities and local groups and with the local authority to help with the challenges. The referrals for the island have become more complex with our young people, not just the mentoring, we're into additional education provision and counselling. And so with this new centre, we would hope to help re-engage young people for whatever reason that might be, from antisocial behaviour, social isolation, mental health well-being, sensory disabilities and neurodiversity. And this way of engaging the young people in the centre and what it provide in terms of the building and the landscape and the outside activities will help them re-engage socially and then reintegrate into education and through our links with businesses into other forms of employment. It is in planning, we hope imminently, that we would get approval for that, and then together with the council be able to move forward and with other charities in collaboration and partnership to meet the needs of all young children and young people in York, who are the centre and the future for our city. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking on that subject, and thank you also to the island for everything that you do within the city. It's a really highly valued service, both by the council and by residents and particularly young people. So thank you for that. Our 5th speaker is Andrew Dickinson, but I don't believe that he has been able to join us this evening. No, Andrew isn't in the room. We were expecting him to join us, so I assume that he's decided that he won't come. Right. So there we go. The end of public participation. Thank you to everybody who's spoken, and we will get back to you where questions were asked. Our next item is the forward plan, which is on pages 21 to 24. And outlines mainly and solely the items for the January meeting. Does anybody have any comments on that? No? Okay, so are we okay to approve that report? Yes, everybody's happy with that. Marvellous, thank you. Item 5 is the Lord Mayoralty for 24-25, and who is coming to the table to speak to that? Is anybody? Is that you?
If any words are needed, Chair, I'm happy to provide them.
Yes, please.
So members have before them what can be considered the standard format for the Lord Mayoralty report presented annually, taking into consideration the number of seats that each party holds and its previous history of holding the Lord Mayoralty. You will see from the report that the Lord Mayoralty for the forthcoming municipal year rests with the Labour group, and assuming that the group is comfortable with the report, then nomination will be put forwards in a subsequent meeting.
Thank you. Great. So just for everybody's reminder, the way that we've been running the meetings in order to make sure that we get through business in an efficient manner is if you'd like to speak on an item, please indicate at this point at the beginning of the item, and then we will go from there and everybody gets an opportunity to speak once. Okay, Councillor Widdowson, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll be very brief because I like the idea that we can get through this in a business-like manner, so thank you. So my understanding is under the current system, we're likely to see a Labour mayor this time, which is great, and a Labour mayor the following year because of the way the systems work. So we get 2 Labour mayors in a row, is my understanding, which is good. That is my understanding, Bryn. I know you're looking confused, but that is my understanding.
Doing the maths in my head.
Okay, so, you know, that's the way the systems work. Whoever replaces Councillor Chris Culwick as Lord Mayor will have a big task to follow because he has done some fantastic work in raising a significant amount of money for both Snappy and women's counselling, which has gone down really well this year and allowed him to do it outside of the pandemic for the first time. And he's also massively increased our reputation abroad with the latest visit from the ambassador from Germany and many other visits that he's made. So I know that he will pass it across to the next Lord Mayor, and I hope whoever it is can take the learnings that he's got and grow the role even further.
Thank you, Councillor Widdowson. And yes, so there will be a Labour mayor in 24-25, and we are in the final stages of confirming that, and that will come through to a report in early 24. So everybody can see who that is going to be. And I know that the people who are taking over the civic office, the mayor and the sheriff, are very keen to work with the team who are currently in place to make sure that that's a seamless transition and that they learn from them as much as they can. And I would like to thank Councillor Cullick and his team for everything they've done. They've worked tremendously hard and done a fantastic job, and we will have another opportunity to do that in full council as well. And I speak to him regularly. We often go to events together, and I've had a very nice time doing that as well. So very much thanks to him. And we look forward to a Labour mayor in May 2024. So thank you, everybody. The recommendations are on page 26. And it says that members are asked to consider the point system and accumulation and invite the Labour group to consider accepting the nomination for the Lord Mayor for 24-25. And so are we happy to accept those recommendations? everybody's in agreement. Very good, unanimous agreement there. So thank you, everybody. And very good. Right, item 6 then. Okay. Item 6 is the refreshed governance arrangements for York's Human Rights and Equalities Board. And we have Laura Williams and Pauline Stutchfield here to introduce the report for us that is on pages 31 to 50 for everybody. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thanks. So I'll just give a very brief background and then happy to answer any questions. York's been a human rights city since April of 2017. It was recognised when that declaration was signed that it wasn't a destination, but rather a step on the journey to become a human rights city. As part of that work, the council convened the Human Rights and Equalities Board. The board continued to meet regularly until there was a significant relationship breakdown between ourselves and the York Human Rights City Network in 2021, following the decision taken around city centre access at the time. A lot of work's taken place since to rebuild that relationship. In January this year, we took a report to the executive member at the time, reaffirming the council's commitment to being a human rights city. As you'll see at paragraph 14 of the report, one of the recommendations approved at that meeting was to convene a task group, which was drawn from City of York Council, the York Human Rights City Network Executive and civil society to refresh the terms of reference for the Human Rights and Equalities Board. So the draft that we've included at Annex A is the culmination of that work, which you are asked to approve this evening. Significant changes to note in those terms of reference are highlighted at paragraph 16 of the report. The report also includes the City of York Council's response to the annual Human Rights Indicator report and an outline of our plans around the development of a new human rights and equalities analysis tool, and then some subsequent training, both of which are asked to note. And I would just like to very quickly take the opportunity to thank both the Human Rights City Network and the Centre for Applied Human Rights for their support in getting us to the point where we're ready to reconvene the board.
Thank you, Laura. Pauline, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, just equal thanks to the Human Rights City Network, who have worked excellently in partnership with the council in recent months to get us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would members like to contribute or ask questions? Okay, so we've got Councillor Widdowson, and we've got Councillor Lomas and Councillor Kilbane. Councillor Widdowson, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Chair. I agree, Laura, with an awful lot of what you've said. The advisory board advises the council on a range of human rights areas, delivering in-depth studies on a wide range of issues such as children not in education and the Housing First strategy to tackle homelessness. There was a breakdown in relationships, and all have worked very hard to reset that relationship. We are pleased to see that there are many of the terms renegotiated from the last executive will be taken forward in the new terms of reference. It's also pleasing to see the increasing transparency with publicly available agendas and minutes, and the once a year meeting open to the public. It's also appropriate that there are co-chairs to underline the cooperative arrangements between the council and those that sit on the board as volunteers. And we also welcome the new powers this board has to refer situations where there is a disagreement both to the leader of the council and the chair of corporate services, and whatever the rest of it is, that CCSMC thing that I always keep getting wrong for consideration. It's great that we've got a new set of terms of references that all sides of the council can agree to, and we look forward to the re-establishment of the Human Rights and Equalities Board. However, and there's always a however, it is concerning that the council is proposing to cut the community's budget further in order to create the capacity for this board. If the executive were serious about creating a body that could effectively do the hard work of producing in-depth reports into the various rights and equalities issues we face, then it wouldn't be proposing to try and find the money in one of the council's most stretched budgets.
Thank you, Councillor Widdowson. Councillor Lomas, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I thank officers for the report, and I note the comments made earlier about the quality of the report, and I'd like to echo them. It is a source of deep shame that a human rights city allowed their Human Rights and Equalities Board to collapse. And I'm very grateful for the work of the Human Rights City Network, the Centre for Applied Human Rights, CYC officers and the new executive to rebuild those relationships and ultimately to come to a redrafting of the terms of reference that gave everyone confidence to move forward. Human rights and equalities are ever more a focus, especially as the effects of the cost of living crisis on residents and on the council itself start to bite, and we need to protect and defend human rights even more robustly at times like this. It's crucial that we have a workable board where we can learn from one another, work collaboratively, challenge and be challenged on all of the issues that face our city. We do, however, need a process to deal with situations where there is a fundamental disagreement. The Human Rights City Network must be able to publicly raise an issue where they believe that actions taken or to be taken are breaching human rights. It is crucial that we are brave enough to open ourselves to a level of challenge that has been avoided in the past, to ensure that there is a route into cross-party scrutiny where there is a decision that is breaching human rights. We must all learn from mistakes that have been made in the past, even if they were not our own mistakes. These refreshed terms of reference provide that route into scrutiny and a formalised acknowledgement that the Human Rights City Network has the expertise and authority to hold the City of York Council to account on human rights, to help us to preserve our status as a human rights city. Of course, we intend as an administration to do all we can to work with the Human Rights City Network and partners on the Human Rights and Equalities Board to ensure that such an eventuality never happens. And if I had not been witness to the past few years under the previous administration, I would be saying that it was highly unlikely that it ever would happen. But sadly, I have learned through experience that it's perfectly possible for an administration to lack the humility and respect required to avoid such a situation. I sincerely hope that we will never reach that stage, and I thank again the Human Rights City Network and all partners involved for their support, encouragement and robust challenge that have brought us to this point. But that's not the only thing that is contained in this report. We also introduced the Human Rights and Equalities Analysis tool, which I'm very, very proud of, having spent 4.5 years asking City of York Council to move into the modern age and use an equality analysis approach, which was introduced with the Equality Act in 2010, not so long ago then. I'm really excited about this piece of work because it gives us a chance to truly examine our own work, scrutinise it under an equalities and human rights lens, and make sure that every decision we make, every choice that we take, has human rights and equalities properly understood. I'm also excited that we're creating a post to do some of this important work. And Councillor Widdowson might be sad about communities' budget being stretched, and all budgets in the council are stretched. But it's wonderful that we're now placing such a high priority on equalities and human rights that we say we need experts in our officer corps who are able to carry out this work. And that's not happened in recent past. And if we are going to get back to the standard of excellence in the LGA equalities framework, then we need people to help us to do that. And it's very clear that that is something that this council has been lacking in for some time. So I welcome absolutely everything in here. I'm very excited about it. I'm proud to be part of a team that is putting equalities and human rights at the forefront of everything that we do.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas, and hear. Couldn't agree more. Councillor Kilbane.
Yeah, I'll be brief, Chair, because Councillor Lomas has covered most of the points. I just wanted to emphasise that while the relationship with the Human Rights Board broke down over the blue badge ban, and we've obviously reversed that ban, but that doesn't mean that everything's fixed. You know, and I just want to put it on record that we acknowledge that, and thanks to the Human Rights City Network for coming back, talking to us, and finding a way through. But just because, you know, we've put right one of the wrongs of the previous administration doesn't mean that we're all good. You know, we will continue to face considerable human rights challenges as a city, as an administration, and just wanted to publicly say to the board that we welcome the scrutiny and advice. Hopefully there won't be issues, but where there are issues, we need to deal with them.
Thank you, Councillor Kilbane. Right, so the recommendations for this report are on page 32 and 33. So we're being asked to approve refreshed governance arrangements that are in Annex A, and note the response to the Human Rights City Network Annual Indicator Report, and notes within that work that we need to do to make sure that we respond to it, and note the plans for developing human rights and equality analysis to support the decision making. So can I see those who are in agreement with those recommendations, please? Right, great, thank you very much. That's a unanimous passing of those recommendations again, and thank you to everybody for all your hard work in this area, because I know it has been a really difficult and long task to get back to the position where we're at now, considering that it is, well, 2.5 years ago, I assume, that we've been working on this. So thank you very much, and let's move onwards and upwards. Thank you. Item 7 on the agenda is City of York Council actions in response to the York anti-racism inclusion strategy. And Laura and Pauline are here to speak to us again about this. Pauline, do you want to move forward with that one?
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to bring a report which provides a plan of action as to the City of York Council's response to the 5-year anti-racism and inclusion strategy, which was presented to and approved by Executive and full Council in July earlier this year. We committed to bring back an action plan in 3 months. I think we're just over that, 3.5 months. And we also agreed to sign up to the city's anti-racism pledge, providing city leadership on this issue, and you will see the action plan responds to the commitments within that pledge also. So as part of that commitment, CYC acknowledges that in terms of casual, institutional and structural racism, there is a long way to go within the council, and lessons and improvement actions need to be learned from the experiences of employees and users of the council's services. This work sits firmly alongside the current self-assessment work ongoing in the council to meet the requirements of the Equalities framework for local government, and we should receive the initial feedback from the work in the next couple of weeks, and we hope to publish the outcomes of that by the end of this financial year. Alongside hopefully our equalities objectives and revised strategy, we will be meeting the related council plan objectives around equalities and human rights and equalities of opportunity that Laura's just been talking about. And in there, it says we will stand up to hate and work hard to champion our communities, with specific priorities around celebrating being a human rights city with an anti-racism action plan, and being recognised by the LGA as excellent in equalities and diversity and inclusion. And that's our ultimate aim with all of this work. You referred to the action plan in Action A, and the actions in the action plan are derived from 3 sources. Specific actions from the 5-year anti-racism and inclusion strategy produced by our colleagues in IER UK 3.0, actions from the pledge, and actions from the equality impact assessment, not only from the work that we've done around this report, but from the previous work we did in the July report as well. Very, very much focused around the feedback, the lived experience feedback within the strategy, but also the lived experience from our own staff within the council, as many of the recommendations are around our own internal processes. So Executive is asked to approve the anti-racism action plan, and noting some of the key actions around reviewing further in detail the recommendations relating to housing, schools and social care, working with those respective management teams, because we've not specifically gone into those in this report, and therefore more work needs to be done. Continue to engage with our staff groups and wider workforce to inform the strategy, policy and process changes that are recommended in the action plan, and continue importantly to work with city partners and IER UK on citywide solutions. And we are importantly going to be involved in a task group looking at the citywide implications of the strategy. So the work doesn't stop here. We will continue to work with partners across the city. And what's not covered in the report is how we're going to be held accountable for the action plan in this report. So we have an internal equalities leadership group chaired by Laura. We are also going to regularly report to our executive member, who is equally keen to ensure that we're embedding practice and demonstrating embedded practice across all of our council services. So you're asked to approve the recommendations on agenda page 54, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. That's absolutely fantastic to hear. And Laura, do you need something further? No. Thank you. Can I just see who'd like to speak on this item, please? Right, I would just like to start off before we go ahead by saying that, as Pauline outlined, this really does focus at this point in time on the internal structures within CYC and looking at how our employees look and feel towards the organisation and their employment in CYC, but also during recruitment, and how we move to a point where our employment base better represents the statistics that show us how many groups actually make up the population of York that are not necessarily represented in our employees at this point in time, and that needs to be tackled rather promptly, I think, and also on an ongoing basis. So I'm really glad to see that. But the work is not going to be finished there. It is really important that our residents, our service users, feel that the council is receptive to them, no matter where they come from, their background, where their home now is. And it is really important that we tackle every aspect of that experience, and it will form part of the general improvement within customer experience that we are carrying out as a matter of urgency within the council at this point in time. So I thank you for what you have done so far, and also the organisations that have been involved in the strategy IER UK 3.0, and but look forward to where we go next once we've achieved what's been outlined within the report. So Councillor Widdowson, would you like to go ahead?
Oh, thank you. I keep getting to go first. Okay, thank you for the report again. Really good report. It's going to be incredibly interesting to see the specific actions from this report come through. We do have some questions on the delivery of this strategy and measuring the success of the plan. In point 1, the report talks about the ethnic pay gap and profile of the senior leadership team, with September as a time frame to set the targets to deliver progress. We hope to see real tangible targets for recruitment when the update comes in September, which I'm sure it will. In points 8, 9, 10 and 12, it's great that these actions will be taken as a part of the council's approach into anti-racism. But how exactly will the success of these measures be assessed? And will they be reported on quarterly, monthly? It's just a couple of questions, Pauline. We can answer them later. In the report, point 3 says that the council will be recruiting a diversity inclusion team in June 24. Is this reflected in the budget? And the other questions that we've got are in point 7, or the final question, in point 7, youth services and youth club provision is listed. Again, is this in the budget? If yes, why was one of the first acts of the Labour administration to cut the agreed Liberal Democrats budget for the youth support workers who could have helped address some of these issues?
Thank you. I'd just like to remind you, Councillor Widdowson, that if you have any questions, they should be directed to the chair. But anyway, we will proceed. Pauline, do you want to respond to Councillor Widdowson in writing, or would you like to come back with any of those?
Can I respond in writing?
Yes,
There's quite a lot there to
absolutely.
respond
Yes,
to.
that's no problem.
Apologies, Chair, I didn't realise that actually
Yeah,
addressed
okay.
to yourself.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pavlovic, would you like to speak next?
Thank you, Chair. As I'm well known throughout the council for the brevity of my comments, I will keep it short. I'd just like to thank the officers, not just for the report, but for their commitment to taking this on board and the work that they've done over many months. And there are some areas of this report that I absolutely feel are vitally important for the council moving forward. I'm really pleased that we're now at last incorporating gypsies and travellers into our anti-racism policy, an area that's been neglected for far too many years, as indeed has the community, which we will now address. But as with all things, and as with all strategies and policies, they mean nothing unless they're embedded. And that's why I've worked with not just the communities team, but all the teams under my portfolio areas to say, I want to see evidence, and this answers to some extent the points that Councillor Widdowson's been raising, evidence of how they're embedding anti-racism within their strategy, not just within recruitment, but within the way they treat our customers, as well as our staff. So training will be embedded and will be being delivered, and training packages are being written. But the proof of the pudding will be, does this sit on a shelf getting dusty, or does it actually result in changing the way we operate as a council? There you go. That was brief. Well, it was brief for me.
Very good. Well done. Thank you, Councillor Pavlovic, and Councillor Lomas.
Thank you, Chair. If Councillor Widdowson wants to ask any questions about the budget, she is obviously always more than welcome to approach me anytime to do so. I'm always very happy to speak about it, as you all know. I'd like to thank officers and IER UK 3.0 for all the work done to get us to this point. We were really proud as an administration to bring forward the anti-racist city strategy back in July. And since then, we've worked on the actions that need to be taken within the council to ensure we can live the values that we aspire to for the entire city. No organisation is immune to issues of structural and systemic racism, and it's really important that we can openly discuss these issues, that we can invite, welcome and value challenge on them, as well as taking a critical approach to what's happening in our own organisation. When we launched the anti-racist city strategy way back, it feels like a long time ago, but it was only July. I was asked in a radio interview about the one sentence in the report that notes that all of the councillors on City of York Council are white, which is a simple, plain and simple fact, which would be evident to anyone who watches any of the live streams of our council meetings. And it is a fact, and it is and should be a concern for us that the councillors here to represent the city do not, in fact, represent the city. And it's our job, we are tasked with looking at finding the reasons for that. And one of the things I said during that interview is that having listened to the lived experience of somebody who had experienced overt racism as well as systemic and structural racism in her life in our city, why on earth would you put yourself forward to represent the council and to represent your community on the council? So we have a lot of work to do but we also have work to do on the lack of representation throughout the organisation. And I firmly believe that it's only by examining those issues and exposing them to scrutiny that we ever will make progress on systemic and structural racism throughout society. Our administration is determined to address racism wherever and whenever we encounter it. And it's clear there's a lot of work for us to do. And inevitably, there will be more work that we uncover as this work progresses, and we'll be equally determined to take that on. I think it's also important to note that some of the actions in this action plan involve including those with lived experience, especially those in the BARMC group in the council, in developing the detail of the actions. And that's important. It would be wholly wrong of us to sit around this table and dictate what actions should be taken within the council to address systemic and structural racism. It is wholly appropriate that we listen to those who have that lived experience and use that lived experience to make sure that we are doing the right things in the right ways at the right time. I'm exceptionally proud to have had two very positive things to do this evening that haven't involved talking about difficult budgets. And I'm really grateful to everyone who's worked to make this happen. From the original motion that went to council, it feels like a long time ago in 2021, through all the work that was done to make the anti-racist city strategy report come to life. And now in the council, the work that we are going to do to make sure we live our values. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas, very well said. And I think we'll share your optimism and glee at the fact that we are now where we are, which is great. So the recommendations for this report are on page 54. And it says that executive is asked to approve the initial CYC anti-racism action plan attached to Annex A. And then it lists under there some of the items that are included in there. So can I see those who are in favour of accepting those recommendations, please? Yeah, so those are passed. Thank you, unanimously. Marvellous. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Laura and Pauline. And you can go home now. Thank you very much. The next agenda item is number 8, and that's the reprocurement of the Adult Community Wellbeing Support Service. And Michael Melvin is here to introduce that to us. So, Michael, thank you for joining us this evening. Oh, thank you. Off you go. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Chair. So yes, this paper is seeking the permission to reprocure our community wellbeing contract for adults. As you'll see from the paper, we're looking to extend until July 2024, which enables us then to kind of reprocure the contract for a maximum of 7 years. The value of that contract is over the 7-year period is 6,638,625, and that's the maximum period it would be reprocured for. And the extension that takes us to the point when we would have the new service is £549,000. So these services which are provided under this contract are to some of the most vulnerable people in the city. These services provide accommodation and support to men and women who have some of the most complex needs and need support to access the things in York which many of us take for granted, and also the support which they often need in terms of mental health and substance misuse. And the services which are really critical to the delivery of our strategy around homelessness, and particularly necessary to deliver our ambition to end rough sleeping and reduce inequality. There's a real opportunity with this to reprocure in a different way. You'll see from the paper that at the moment we have a lot of people who access these services who do so on a repeat basis and do so with increasing complexity each time they go through the service. So it's really important that when we reprocure this, we do so in a way which tackles those issues, which helps people get the right support in a more preventative way that stops the escalation of those needs. And it's important we do that, and if we don't, there's a likelihood that without that approach, there's potential for statutory services to get overwhelmed, both in adult social care and the NHS. You'll see from the paper that there is a reduction in the contract value of £150,000, and there is that's based on the activity which is undertaken and can be delivered through focusing on some of the hostel support and some of and reducing the contract around some of the floating support, which we certainly believe is achievable. You'll see from the paper as well that within there we have the mechanisms which enable us to extend by 6 months, which keep us legal and safe, and also the route to procuring as well, and how we would achieve that in a way which optimises the best chance of good outcomes from there. There are a couple of things which are omitted from the report, which I would just want to touch on. In terms of the health and wellbeing outcomes from this, clearly those are central to the delivery of this contract, and they have a very positive outcome in terms of the support which people will be able to access through them. As this is an externally procured model, or the proposal is, there will be no HR implications in terms of City of York employees. And as we procure this, we really need to be mindful of the way in which we award the contract, and it has the right impact in terms of how we approach the environment and make sure that we contract with the right provider for us to do that. But again, clearly in terms of the affordability, central to this project is making sure that some people who are the furthest for things which, again, many of us take for granted within York, have the ability to access those things in a way in which they wouldn't do should we not have these services in place. So in terms of the recommendations, what we're asking for is the delegated power to the Director of Adult Social Care and Integration to extend the contract and then procure the services on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Can I see who'd like to speak on this item, please? Thank you. Councillor Widdowson, do you want to go ahead?
Certainly. Thanks ever so much, Chair. Michael, thank you for the report. It's really good. It's a very interesting report, even though the title is a little misleading. A better title would have been Homeless Support and Budget Reduction. It's clear that the executive will extend the contract for 6 months, not bring the service in-house, and look to outsource the service through a tender process. It's a shame this option wasn't given to the Salvation Army Homeless Support. Within the tendering process, can we have answers to whether or not we will see the same employment standards that the council offers in terms of a real living wage, fire and rehire, pension contributions, etc., for this outsourced resource service rather? Will it also seek a commitment? I think you've said this, Michael. We'll also seek a commitment from those awarded the contract to become a net zero organisation by 2030. And finally, on a slightly different point, are the exec aware of the bombshell email from the chair of the HHASC to the chair of A&G requesting a review into the actions of the council on the Salvation Army debacle? We look forward to the results of this review and the impact of the service on the users.
Thank you, Councillor Widdowson. I would say that the majority of that was irrelevant to this item, but I'm sure we'll think about those that were relevant. Councillor Coles, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Michael, for accommodating my requirements in this paper as we've been through the drafting process. Obviously, this is a statutory service, and this extension will enable us to the procurement to take place. And it will also provide us with an opportunity to ensure that this contract then aligns with the new homelessness strategy that Councillor Pavlovich, I know, is developing at the moment. It is unfortunate that the timeline for this procurement has been challenging. It is something that hadn't been started when the new Labour administration came in, and so it is something that has to be picked up and started as the new administration came in. But I do note the comments from Gwen Swinburne earlier in the meeting about the notice and presence of this on the forward plan. And it is something that we are working to improve as a new administration to ensure that there is due notice given to the public and to wider stakeholders about this kind of procurement activity. I just wanted to particularly thank all the officers and staff who are currently delivering this contract. Services are extremely stretched, pressures are really high, the country feels broken and under the Conservatives nationally, and as a result of increased complexity of need and demands on the service becoming more challenging. And we know that we've got across the city some brilliant professionals who go above and beyond every single day to take care of some of our most vulnerable residents. Page 96 of the report, I just wanted to draw people's attention to around health inequalities, which we talk about a lot as an administration, and we particularly talk about it in terms of the different areas of the city. But I just wanted to draw people's attention to the life expectancy of someone who is homeless is actually 30 years different to anybody else. And that is an astonishing failure of services, not in York, but across the country to look after vulnerable citizens. And I think it points to the challenges that we face as a city and across the country, that we need to do something desperately to reduce that kind of completely unacceptable level of inequality. And as a Labour administration, we are committing to doing that. And our work on reducing health inequalities has been addressing that. Just on page 157 of the report, the picture of the complex needs and the changing demands that these services are having to address. I particularly wanted to draw people's attention to the impact of poor mental health and the need for a different system and a different way of delivering a service that is addressing the complex needs and support that people across the city need. And we know that the landscape across the city has changed, and it is good to have the opportunity through this procurement process to address some of those changing needs and what we will need to do in order to deliver value for money for council taxpayers across the city. Because, as we say, although Councillor Lomas hasn't actually said it that much this evening, we do have limited resources and we do have huge budget pressures which are not going away, and there is no sign of a change in heart, or indeed any heart at all, from the current government. So we're going to have to do the best that we can within the constraints of the budgets that we have to ensure that we deliver the best that we can for our most vulnerable residents, and to ensure that we retain control of these services that we need to deliver, and we know that we can deliver better for the people of the city. And I just wanted to take finally the opportunity to thank those working every day, especially to those who will continue to do this throughout the winter and over the Christmas period, out there looking after our vulnerable residents. It is hugely appreciated, and we'd like to pass on, I would certainly like to pass on my thanks to them. But I would urge us to support this paper so that we can get that contract extension in and the procurement process underway.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Pavlovic?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'd certainly like to echo the points that's been made by Councillor Coles, in particular the final ones in respect of thanking all of those that are working on the streets, in our hostels, in our mental health services, and in our hospitals as well. it's a very challenging time for everybody, and as the weather gets colder, the importance of making sure that people are supported is ever more important. People might be confused as to why this falls under Councillor Cole's area of responsibility rather than a housing one. People will be pleased, I'm sure, to hear that we are working very closely together in developing the new homelessness and rough sleeper strategy. Councillor Widdowson, bless her, has already determined what the outcome of that's going to be, which is fantastic going, given that we haven't even started the consultation process yet. But the consultation process will be a robust one, which is why it's important that this contract is extended for a limited period, because we're not going to predict what the service is going to look like. It will look different, I can guarantee you that, to the service that's currently being delivered. And in discussions that I've had with Changing Lives and other stakeholders, they recognise that the old models of working with complex needs people have to adapt. There are changing needs, there are changing demographics as much as the nature of the issues that we're currently facing. But hostels, and this is a reprocurement of essentially hostel and supported accommodation, don't suit everybody, and that's why we need to have a new flexible approach. It's shocking that in 2021 we will have almost 400,000 people experiencing homelessness, as the newspaper article reflected this morning, over the Christmas period. We have a duty and a responsibility to care for them and to ensure that homelessness ends. And in York, I believe we can do that. We will do it. And we will have an approach that meets people's needs, as well as the need for accommodation. Homelessness isn't just a lack of a roof over your head. It's a whole history that has often led an individual to that place. We need to develop a holistic approach, and we talked about holistic approaches in the last paper. We also need to understand, because that way, by understanding and then acting to support individuals to move forward, that cycle of repeated homelessness, we can start to address. And we've seen it work. So that's pretty much all I will need to say. There will be new papers coming. It will come back to this executive. It will also involve stakeholders, rough sleepers themselves, service users, and the Housing Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pavlovic and Councillor Coles. And I couldn't agree more that, you know, this is a hugely important and large piece of work, and it will be transformative to how we deliver services for homeless people in the city. And it couldn't come soon enough. It should have been done previously, and there were ample opportunities to do that. And now we're picking up the baton and we are going to do it. So moving that forward on page 97 to 99 of the recommendations there, and there are various delegated authorities to the Corporate Director of Adults and Integration in consultation with Head of Procurement, Chief Operating Officer, I believe, Director of Governance. I likely could go on, Chief Finance Officer, around procurement, getting the procurement process started, renewing, extending the current contract, renewing and extending leases, which obviously is an awful lot of work, and I will leave you to read those for those who want to on pages 97 to 99. Can I see who is in agreement with the recommendations, please? Yeah, so those are approved unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for that. And thank you, Michael, for joining us this evening. And we really appreciate everything you and your teams are doing. Thank you. Right, so item number 9 is urgent business, and I've had no report of any urgent business. So I then bring the meeting to a close, and thank you, everybody.